Hello, I'm here, Churches, McDonald's End on this very, very busy Monday afternoon once again. Let me try and get out of that sun. You see, if you were to ask those commonly known as the Windrush generation who came here after the 1948 Nationality Act was passed, right, if you ask them, would you like London to return to how it once was when you first came here? I'll guarantee vast majority would say yeah. Yeah, there was problems at first when those came from former British territories settled here in Britain, but they could have been overcome. But what happened? Cultural change continued, preventing that. It just created more problems, as we all know, and the rest is history. London now has been culturally changed, right? So if you were to ask the original Windrush generation, would they like London to return as it was when they first settled here? I'm sure vast majority would say yeah. And the same is now happening here in our glorious city, except what happened in London and many other places, there was a cultural change. Still not good for the host culture, but a cultural change. What we're seeing now is cultural chaos. What we have in Hare Hills, let's say, in Leeds. Yet some of these other places, Bradford, Oldham, Burnley, many other places, there's a culture there that dominates. There's not cultural chaos. Again, it's still no good for the host culture that was driven out, but there's cultural change. All the same, like I've said, that's still no good for the host culture, community that was driven out. My point being is that, yes, there's cultural change in those areas, which again is still not in our best interest. But what is happening now, it's going from cultural change to cultural chaos. And I'm sure them areas eventually will be affected. Cultural chaos or cultural change is the enemy of everyone. It is not our friend, let's say. That's a better word. Cultural change is not our friend. Cultural chaos most certainly isn't. If you see where I'm coming from, right? If you ask the original Windrush generation that settled here, as I say, after the 1948 Nationality Act was passed, would you like London to return to its former self, its former glory when you first settled here? And I'm sure vast majority would say yeah, right? But like I've said, that didn't happen. Or should I say, when they first came, yet there were problems that they had to overcome, and I'm sure that could have been easily achieved, but cultural change continued, right? It didn't stop, it continued, and the rest is history. You have to forgive me, it's getting really busy. And so some of these areas that were culturally changed, once again, still no good for the host community, the host culture there. They were culturally changed, but what's happening now? It's gone from cultural change to cultural chaos. That is what is happening, and that's not the friend of anyone, right? Like I've said, the Windrush generation, they probably, or vast majority probably don't like cultural chaos, right? The small cultural change that occurred in the small communities they settled in after the 1948 Nationality Act was passed, they were probably quite happy with that, and they'd have wished London to have remained as it was when they settled there. But what happened, as I've said, cultural change continued, where now it's leading to cultural chaos, and that, as I've said, is no good for anyone, for any group, for any culture. And so that's why it's in all our interest to oppose further cultural change of our glorious city. I hope I said that okay. It's getting a bit busy, as I say, and I'm trying to articulate something. It's sometimes it's not that easy, and you're dodging in and out of crowds and whatever. So the new arrivals that have settled here in Liverpool and have embraced the Scouse fam, it's in your interest to get behind the candidate opposed to further cultural change, because long term this will be no good for you, because it will result and lead to cultural chaos like we see in places like Hare Hills, Leeds, West Yorkshire, right? Yet there's been cultural change, as I say, Bradford, Burnley, Oldham, Bolton, places like that, and that has been to the detriment of the local host culture. But there is still not cultural chaos there yet. There's just been a cultural shift. Again, that's no good long term for the host community. But where we now see it leading is to cultural chaos. And I'm almost sure, because it's happening now, I'm almost sure some of these communities that where there's been a cultural switchover, they will start being affected by cultural chaos, because they're not going to be able to hold it back and keep it at bay, because where did he fit everyone in? Well, exactly, this is what's happening. There's just too many. There's 1 million or something coming in a year. That is horrendous. It's just so, the areas that have been culturally changed, they will eventually start descending into cultural chaos. More and more communities across the country will go through a stage of cultural change, then cultural chaos, like we're seeing here in Liverpool. Kensington and Fairfield is a typical example of cultural chaos, like in Hare Hills, right? As I've said, where a culture's been replaced, say in Blackburn or Bradford, that's still no good for the host community that was once there. In fact, it's bad. But even those communities will go from a change to chaos. Of course, that is what can only happen. You watch this video now, you can see the cultural chaos in the making. Our city centre is becoming an unfamiliar and unfriendly place. This is not the city centre we all remember. It's not the city centre we want to pass down to our children, grandchildren, and all those amazing Scousers yet to be born. I hope I said that right. I hope I said it correct. I articulated it best I could. It's sometimes not easy. As I say, I'm not a professional speaker. I'm not an intellectual. I'm just Joe Owens, bringing the awful truth to the good people of Liverpool, because these politicians, they've abandoned the good people of this city to cultural change, right? Which, as we can see, is leading to cultural chaos. When you watch this video, ladies and gentlemen, you can see where Joe Owens is coming from, right? It's not me having a go at anyone. It's not me being horrible or far right or racist or prejudiced or whatever other trigger words they use. I am telling you the awful truth. I am bringing the awful truth, should I say, to the good people of this city as to what is happening. Cultural change is now going into cultural chaos mode. We now see that happening in the once proud working class Scouse community of Kensington and Fairfield. I'll call time now, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I got my message across. Okay, you understood where I was coming from. All the same, remember, no to cultural change, yes to Scouse pride. Shout it out loud, Scouse and proud. Okay, thank you. Hello, I'm still here on Church Street. I thought I'd like to add those communities that have been culturally changed, say like Blackburn, Bradford, Oldham, Burnley, right? They're still cohesive in the sense that one culture dominates that particular part of those areas. But once cultural chaos starts impacting on their community, they will be opposing it soon. Trust me, this is going to happen, right? When these long-standing, because they're long-standing for many decades now, and they're cohesive in the sense is that one community dominates there. It's the culture that doesn't want to assimilate, it wants to dominate. But once their apple cart starts getting mixed up, that's not the word for it. What's the word for it now? It's on the tip of my tongue. Once their apple cart, say, starts getting ruffled, that's probably not the right word. I'm trying to think. They won't like it. They will be opposed to cultural chaos, right? Because the end result of cultural chaos, there is no cohesiveness, there is no unity, there's division, misery and distrust, right? That's what happens. Places like Hare Hills, Leeds, Leicester, and even here in Kensington and Fairfield, cultural chaos has happened there so quick. Them communities didn't have a chance to catch the breath before it happened, right? They put faith in their politicians and the rest is history, right? So even the cohesive, culturally changed areas of Britain, like I said, that have replaced the original host culture there, they will be opposing cultural chaos soon, right? They will, trust me, right? There are very exciting times ahead, ladies and gentlemen. Joe Owens wouldn't be down here making these videos if I believed it was a complete waste of time. It's not a complete waste of time. right? This is the beginning of where people say no, and especially here in Liverpool, our glorious city, people here now are beginning to say no. They don't want cultural chaos, right? They want their Scouse communities to remain Scouse. But trust me, on a final word, that's what will happen. Areas around the country that have been culturally changed, they soon will be opposing cultural chaos that will be impacting on their long-standing communities. Once again, if I've said that right. I'm going to go now. It's getting really busy. So remember, no to cultural change. Yes to Scouse pride. Shout it out loud. Scouse and proud. Okay, thank you.